Let's go to the debate section and talk about how CNN is rigging the debate rules. Let's put it up there on the screen. So what do we have here? They have announced the official mutually agreed upon rules. Biden and Trump have agreed to mic muting, to podiums, and in an empty stage. So, quote, the debate, which will be hosted by CNN's Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, who we will get to later in the show, will mark the very first in-person showdown of 2024 campaign. Now, the rules that the two have agreed upon include 2 commercial breaks. The campaign staff will not be allowed to interact with their candidate during that time. Both candidates will appear at the uniform podium. Their podium positions will be determined by a coin flip. Microphones will be muted throughout the debate except for the candidate whose turn it is to speak. While no props or pre-written notes will be allowed on the stage, candidates will be given a pen and a pad of paper and a bottle of water. Some aspects of the debate, including the absence of studio audience, will be a departure from previous. As in the past, moderators, quote, will use all tools at their disposal to enforce timing and ensure a civilized discussion. But here, let's get into the nitty-gritty. In order to meet CNN's qualifications for the debate, candidates must satisfy requirements outlined in Article 2, Section 1 of the U.S. Constitution to serve as president. Both Biden and Trump meet those requirements, as does RFK Jr., Cornel West, and Jill Stein. Participants must file a formal statement of candidacy to the FEC. All 5 have done so. Here's where they get RFK. All participating debaters must appear on a sufficient number of state ballots to reach 270 electoral vote threshold to win the presidency and receive at least 15% in 4 separate national polls of registered or likely voters that meet CNN standards for reporting. Okay, so let's be very clear here about the polling and the 270 requirement, because here is how they are getting RFK. Let's go to the next part, please. As you can see clearly, the Kennedy campaign has said he submitted 3,300 signatures in Minnesota on Friday, listed the states, 19 states with 278 electoral votes where he claims ballot access, but at least half of those states have not yet verified that his submission is valid. So that, Krystal, is how they are really rigging it. Because he officially—
This is outrageous.
Because officially he's not on the ballot in those states, half of those states, which, why do they have any incentive to approve him? In the interim, why would you do it? They're like, no, we're keeping him off of the debate stage.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
He technically has qualified. He's going to qualify for 278 electoral votes, absent some crazy shenanigans. So this is my other thing too, when you look at the rules. Why is it that you're allowed to poll up to 15%? In there's no such thing as public polling, in NBC poll, whatever poll. So we can take like non-official polling, but officially you have to be on the ballot in for 270 votes. How does that make any sense?
It's outrageous.
It's just straight up rigged, to keep him out.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's 100% rigged to keep him out. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
They're trying to put a pretense of neutrality on it, but they've made the criteria such that it is literally impossible for him or any other third-party candidate to be able to gain access under that criteria. Because, these states are all run by Democrats or Republicans. Neither group wants RFK Jr. to be on that stage or to be on their ballots, by the way. And so they can drag their feet and take as long as they want to certify his signatures, et cetera. And so, this is their mechanism in order to make it appear like, oh, we have these neutral criteria and you just didn't meet it. I'm sorry, try again, try harder next time. No. You made it literally impossible. And it is outrageous. I mean, I'm not surprised, right? We knew the moment that CNN announced that they were doing this debate and Trump and Biden agreed, et cetera, we knew what it was gonna look like. But, this should be something, these debates should be something that is really protected in a democracy. But the Biden people wanna talk all about preserving democracy, et cetera, et cetera. It is dramatically anti-democratic to block out the most significant third-party candidate that we've had, since Ross Perot?
Literally since Ross Perot, so it's 1992. So it's
15% in, multiple polls. You have a lot of, we covered earlier the number of quote-unquote deciders, people who, are still contemplating which way they want to go. A disproportionate number of them are open to RFK Jr., and you just want to shut out the ability of the American people to hear what this man has to say. Now, you guys know I'm not an RFK Jr. fan. I'm not voting for him. I got all kinds of issues with him. So this isn't about him, his politics, a support for him specifically. This is about a democratic process that they have no regard for. And it really is outrageous. People should be outraged and they should be disgusted. And CNN knows that if they actually understood what was happening, it would be a problem for them, which is why they go to lengths to try to hide the fact that they just rigged it and made it impossible for him or, again, anyone else, any other third-party candidate to have a chance of making it on that stage.
And it's not fair, too, because the Trump people are like, he's in this to hurt Trump. The Biden people are like, he's in this to hurt Biden. By his own words, he's in this to hurt, quote, unquote, I want to be damaging to both candidates. He's really running on his own name. Take a listen to his recent comments on Piers Morgan.
If the three-way race occurred today, President Trump wins. And if I drop out of that race, President Trump wins even more. He wins 2 extra states, which would be Maine and Virginia. So I think my presence in the race helps President Biden at this point. I'm hoping in the long run that I'll be very damaging to both of the candidates. So, but also, you know, all of our polling is showing that I'm bringing in a lot of people who had given up on the political process, people who weren't going to vote this cycle if I am not in the race.
So there you go. He says, I'm hoping in the long run that I'll be very damaging to both of the candidates. He's not, you know, the ammunition that both of these people really want for him, which is why it's kind of ironic. And the more he plays into that, the better off I think he's going to be, because that gets to the critical I hate both parties demographic, which, as you and I just saw yesterday, that's a full 25% of the entire electorate. That's huge. It's tens of millions of people. If he was on the ballot in all 50 states, I mean, I'm not saying he would win any single state, but I think he would get a good portion of the vote. I think he'd get 20, 25.
You think so?
Like yeah, I think so.
I don't think so, but
I think he would get 25%.
I think it would get double digits potentially,
and that would be
astonishing, right? I mean, double digits would be very significant and a real break from, you know, recent history. I just say that because I do think when you come down to it, people recognize the political system we're in, and that unfortunately we're in a position where you really, at the end of the day, it's going to be one or the other, and people kind of feel like, all right, well, I got to pick between one of them. Third-party candidate support falls off, et cetera. Not to mention that because so far the polls are really mixed about who he, quote unquote, takes more from. And I think he's right that a significant number of his voters too just probably wouldn't vote.
Yes.
Otherwise. So I think he's correct about that. But it has been very mixed over which side he takes more from, which means that he's also taking incoming from both sides. And I do think, you know, at a certain point that we've already seen that he's taken on water from that. If you look at his polling over time, there has been a downward trend as he's getting hit by the Democrats and by the Republicans. And so, you know, I think that's been a challenge for him. The other challenge for him, I think, Dave Smith made this point, and I think he's right about this, is he had a very compelling and very unique positioning as a quote-unquote anti-war candidate when he was speaking out strongly against Ukraine. And then when October 7th happened, and he is, you know, at least as like Zionist and pro-Israel as Joe Biden, let alone Donald Trump, I think that really undercut his appeal among people who not only are anti-war, but who just have that instinct of like, why are we spending all this money over here when we got problems back at home? I do think that his, you know, the fact he isn't at all differentiated from Biden or Trump when it comes to, you know, the key foreign policy issue of the time right now, I think that has really limited his appeal. I think it's especially limited his appeal among young people who otherwise, I believe, would have been quite open to him. And so he also, in that Piers Morgan interview, you can just hear, like, even now he's against a ceasefire, which does actually technically put him to the right of Joe Biden on this issue as well. Really hasn't changed his tune at all vis-a-vis Israel. Let's take a listen to how he sounds today.
At what point does this desperation to eliminate the last members of Hamas get overtaken by the sheer volume of civilians being killed in the process, which I cannot believe will do anything longer term than foment the ideology that drove Hamas in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a lot of questions, and I'd like you to give me time to answer them.
Sure.
You know, and you could ask the same. You brought up Nazi Germany as a kind of an analogy for what's happening in the Mideast, and in 1945 or 44 at Casablanca, Churchill and Roosevelt had an argument because Roosevelt said we have to denazify Germany. And if we don't denazify Germany, it is going to, the Nazis are going to rise up and do the same thing again. Churchill did not want an unconditional surrender for the Nazis. He said, we'll have to kill too many civilians to do that, and everybody will fight for the death. But Roosevelt won that argument. We killed about 2 million Germans during World War II in order to get into Berlin and denazify it. Today, Germany is the richest country in Europe. It's one of the most powerful economies in the world. I think it's the 4th most powerful. And nobody's scared of Germany because it's a peaceful country. So I don't see how people who are saying, well, you should have a ceasefire, then what? Then what? You've rewarded Hamas for taking hostages, and they're going to keep taking hostages to get more and more advantage.
So in any case, he really hasn't changed his tune. We're still doing the World War II Nazi comparisons. I guess theoretically then we should be maybe considering nukes in Gaza, as others have also suggested. And I do want to grapple directly with this idea that you'd be quote unquote rewarding Hamas if you had a ceasefire agreement. Allegedly, Hamas doesn't want a 2-state solution. Allegedly, Hamas doesn't care about Palestinian civilians. So in what way does it, quote unquote, reward Hamas to have a ceasefire? I mean, it's also just at this point, it's like, how many dead civilians is acceptable to you? Because we are at just insane levels of death and destruction, annihilation, far more than actually addressed in World War II. But in any case, this is where he is. He's not moving. He is even now, he's against a ceasefire. This is not a popular position, by the way. I mean, if you look at the country, if you ask what percentage of people are in favor of a ceasefire, it is overwhelming majorities in support. And so somehow his, anti-war positioning and his rhetoric about, wanting to spend that money instead of overseas, focusing it at home, there's a big old carve out when it comes to Israel.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I guess the only thing you could say about it is he definitely believes it, because there would be really no other reason to say it at this point electorally. So anyway,
I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that.
That's my only spin that I can offer. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.